Hey, what's up? What's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our Benny's Bats video for Tuesday, April 26th, is it? Yep, April 26th today. It's a big 15-game slate, so I'm going to get right into it. What we like to do here in the Benny's Bats section is we look at each pitcher that's on the mound, try to figure out what their weakness is, and then figure out which bats are the best to target against them. So let's start with the first game. We'll start with Houston at Seattle. You got Dallas Keuchel pitching against the Seattle Mariners, going up against Nathan Karns. Keuchel's a guy who's been lights out the left-handed bats. Right-handed bats have really been the way that you wanted to go and attack them. But even then, they're only hitting like 227 against them with a 1.10 whip. I mean, there was a reason why this guy was the Cy Young last year. He hasn't had a very good start to this season, though. The one guy who I want to mention, there's one right-handed bat who smashes left-handers on this Mariners team, and that's Nelson Cruz. Since the beginning of last year, 459 WOBA, 322 ISO, and he actually has a 7 of 14 lifetime line against Dallas Keuchel with 2 home runs. So I'm not a slave to BVP, but when you have a guy who profiles to do well against a pitcher, and then you see that he actually has the history to back it up and he has done well against them, that's definitely something that I think makes a strong correlation. So Nelson Cruz is pretty cheap today. I think he's going to be low owned, and I think he could be a guy with some big upside. So there you go. Started off with the bold call here in the first game. On the other side of this game, we got Nathan Karns. Let's see. He's given up 9 earned runs and 15 innings pitched so far this year. Left-handed bats is usually the way you want to go after him. There aren't a ton of left-handed bats on this Houston team. The two guys who I am kind of looking at, Colby Rasmus has been playing really well as the cleanup hitter there for the Astros. He's somebody I definitely think is in play. And then also Carlos Correa, who hits pretty well in righty-on-righty matchups, 364 WOBA last year, 212 ISO score. Actually faced Karns last year, went 2 for 3 against him with a home run. So again, a guy whose profiles well against him and has the numbers to back it up, definitely something we'd look at. So I know a lot of people are going to be going back to Travis Story. I don't love him that much today. I think going to Correa is a very viable swerve that you can make off of, Story for a high-end shortstop. Next game we'll talk about is an easy one. We got Miami against the Dodgers, and the Dodgers are throwing Clayton Kershaw. So we don't take guys against Clayton Kershaw. It's just not something that's smart to do. If you want to get crazy, Giancarlo Stanton, huge WOBA and ISO numbers over the limited at-bats he's had in the last 2 seasons against left-handed pitching. He's a guy that hits lefties well. He's 4 of 15 lifetime against Kershaw with a home run. If you want to spend money on him, go ahead. I'm not going to do it. The other side of this game, though, I do think we can look at some bats. You got Tom Kohler pitching for Miami. Left-handed bats hit 258 against him with a 1.43 whip, 16 home runs in 94 innings. Right-handed bats also hit about 250 against him, so it's not like he stopped the other side of the plate. So I think you can look at righties and lefties here. Seager's been struggling a little, but he's looked better at the plate. If he's hitting up in the top of the order, I think he's in play. I really like Justin Turner here today. Turner's very good righty on righty. Kohler's a guy who struggles against right-handed bats. He's a 380 WOBA, 199 ISO. He's very cheap, third base option. Just came off the DL a day or 2 ago, so I think he's going to go under the radar, and I think he's in a good spot here. And he's actually 5 of 9 lifetime against Kohler with a home run. So again, the numbers backing up what the profile says it should. Next game we talk about San Diego at San Francisco. We got Johnny Cueto pitching. He's been okay in 2016, but I think this is a great matchup. I mean, he's at home in a good pitcher's park going up against a San Diego offense that's one of the worst out there. The good games that San Diego has had have basically been against left-handed pitching. They do hit left-handed pitching pretty well. They're not very good at hitting right-handed pitching, though. So I think Cueto's in a good spot. He's not a huge strikeout guy, so I don't think you get that big upside out of him. But I do think he's going to pitch well here. I think he's a solid play in cash games. And therefore, I'm nobody on the San Diego team I'm really looking at. They don't have anybody that has over a 350 WOBA in the last, year and a half against right-handed pitching. So, 360 is usually the minimum threshold we look at. And they don't even have anybody that reaches that for us to talk about. On the other side of this game, though, left-handed bats do hit James Shields very well. 279 last year with a 1.65 whip, 23 home runs in 95 innings. Although he is tough on right-handed bats, but I think you can look at some of these lefties here. Guys like Denard Span, guys like Belt, Span 155 ISO, Belt 360 WOBA 195 ISO, 2 for 2 against Shields last year. 5 of 10 lifetime against Shields, 364 Woba, 166 ISO. So, maybe he covers up towards the top of the San Francisco order. If the left-handed bats are the ones I'm looking at, like I said, he is tough on righty, so I'm not really looking at the guys like Pence and Posey, but I would give a look to some of these lefties, especially if the price is nice on them. Next game we can talk about Cleveland at Minnesota. We got Ricky Nolesko pitching, and left-handed bats have been better against him, but basically both right-handers and left-handers have hit him pretty well. So if you want to stack up Cleveland, I think you can, although it's not a great offense. Let's see, Jason Kipnis, probably the one guy that stands out, left-handed bat, 393 Woba, 166 ISO. He's somebody that I'd look at against Nolesko. Like I said, I'm not in love with this lineup. If you want to go to guys like Lindor, I understand, but other than that, I mean, I'm not using Napoli. Maybe, I'm not really looking at anybody else here. It's not like this is a high-scoring offense that, we need to have a big piece of on a 15-game slate. On the other side, we got Cody Anderson pitching. He's had a pretty bad start to 2016. Left-handed bats have always done better against him. We don't really have a lot of lefties on Minnesota. I guess Joe Mauer's in a pretty good spot if you want to roll him out there. But I don't like using a singles hitter at first base, and that's basically what Mauer is right now. So, there's not many bats on the Twins I want. Like I said, left-handers are usually the way you attack them. If you want to go with some of these guys like Sano, who's pretty good righty on righty, I'm not going to stop you. But again, with him being outfield eligible, not third base eligible, I just feel like there's better options out there too. So not really on anybody on the Twins here. We got Pittsburgh against Colorado. This is a game that people are going to want to talk about. Garrett Cole, 16 innings pitched, 16 strikeouts, 13 hits, 4 walks, 5 earned runs. So that's a pretty solid start. Left-handed bats are usually the ones that are better against them, but again, they're not great. This guy was a pretty good pitcher. I guess you can look at a guy like Cargo is probably somebody who profiles the best, 420 Woba, 329 ISO. There's not a lot of BVP history against Cole, so I don't really know who's going to see the ball well and who's going to hit him all that well. Nolan Arenado, 383 Woba, 310 ISO, and righty on righty matchups. Cole is tough on right-handers, so I don't think it's a great spot for him. But again, it's Coors Field. I still think that they're going to get a couple runs here. But again, remember what happened last night. I mean, they wound up with only 1 run. So just because there's a game at Coors doesn't mean every night it's going to be 10 runs. Some nights it is, but other nights it's just a normal baseball game where only 2 or 3 runs get scored. It doesn't happen, it probably happens more often where you get the big numbers, but, it could happen either way. So just keep that in mind. On the other side of that game, though, Jorge De La Rosa is pitching. So that's the matchup we thought we were getting yesterday before he got pushed off for illness. I don't think he goes more than maybe 5-6 innings max here. So you're probably only getting 2 or 3 at-bats out of some of these guys. But, Kutch, Marte, they both hit left-handed pitching really well. McCutchen especially. He's 6 for 19 lifetime against De La Rosa too. So we see a little bit of that in the background. Francisco Cervelli hits left-handed pitching really well. So if you're looking for a catcher option today, 375 Woba, 148 ISO against left-handed pitching. It is in Coors, so most likely his price is going to get jacked up. But he is somebody who I think is one of the better catcher options on the day, at least looking at the numbers. Next game we can talk about, St. Louis at Arizona. We got Carlos Martinez, who's 3-0 with a 2.70 ERA, a whip of 1, and 16 strikeouts in 20 innings. Left-handed bats is really the way to go after him. 262 average, 142 whip for lefties last year. That puts a guy like David Peralta, who's hitting in the middle of that order, in a pretty good spot. 392 Woba, 227 ISO. His price always seems kind of cheap. He hasn't really had a lot of upside games, but he's been a pretty solid player. So definitely somebody I'm looking at in my cash games. And then it doesn't really matter who's pitching. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a righty or a lefty. Paul Goldschmidt, always somebody's in play. 407 Woba, 248 ISO, even in righty on righty matchups. Arizona actually has bad BVP. Carlos Martinez has been pretty good against them in the past. So I think I like Martinez more than I like some of these bats, but if I'm looking anywhere, it's probably going to be Peralta or Goldie. On the other side of this game, we have Shelby Miller. Now, Shelby Miller has had a blister problem for his last 2 starts. He's only gone about 3 innings, and it's really been bothering him. So I'm not really sure what we're going to get here. He's been horrible over those couple innings too. So, if that blister's still bothering him, there's a chance he could get lit up for 5 or 6 runs early in this game. Pretty easily, to be honest with you, because the other game, the blister was bothering him so bad that he couldn't find the strike zone. They had to take him out in the 2nd inning after only pitching to like 10 or 12 batters. I think he's thrown 50 pitches in each of his last 2 outings. So like I said, I'm not really sure what to expect from him here. I don't expect him to bounce back and all of a sudden have a great start. So I think you can look at a lot of these lefties on the Cardinals. Guys like Carpenter, 388 WOBA, 248 ISO, Gearchuk, Hazelbaker, Holiday, Piscotty. I think they're all basically in play. So I think those are, all guys that you can look at. I wouldn't mind stacking up against Shelby Miller. I think that Shelby Miller is going to be one of the guys that you want to kind of target against today. Next game, KC at LA. You got Edinson Volquez, who's been really good to start the year. 3-0, 1.46 ERA, whip of 110, 22 strikeouts in 24 innings pitched. He looks great. Batting average is low to lefties and righties. K percentage is up. And he's facing a bad offense. I mean, Mike Trout, probably the guy that you would be most scared of. 405 WOBA, 287 ISO. I guess Pujols, because righty on righty, he's got some power, jacked out a home run yesterday. Outside of those two, though, there's nothing here that I'm really looking at. Nothing here that really concerns me. And he's going up against Jared Weaver. Now, left-handed bats hit for a higher average and more home runs against Weaver, so I think that's a good thing. Guys like Hosmer, Morales, Mike Moustakas. You got Hosmer with a 378 WOBA, 184 ISO. He's 2 of 9 with a home run. You got Morales with a 366 WOBA, 238 ISO. He's 8 of 14 lifetime with the home run against Weaver. They've seen this guy a lot. They've hit him pretty hard. And, that's another reason why I like Volquez. I think he's in line for the win because I do think that those Kansas City bats are going to get to Weaver and put up some runs. And that Los Angeles Angels offense is not all that great. Next game we can talk about, Cincinnati at the New York Mets. I kind of feel like this is going to be a little bit of a pitcher's duel. I like Finnegan. He's pretty good. He had one bad start against the Cubs, but the other starts that he had were pretty solid. And he's a left-handed pitcher, so he's going up against a very lefty-heavy Mets lineup. And I think that's going to be a good situation for him. The only right-handed bat I'm really scared of on the Mets is David Wright, 470 WOBA, 295 ISO against left-handed pitching. Cespedes is actually better in righty-on-righty situations. So, I kind of feel like this is the way that you're going to attack them. And all these lefties, I think, might struggle. I like a guy like Conforto. He's still cheap, batting in the 3-hole. But again, these guys are all better against right-handed pitching. Granderson, Duda, Neil Walker. So I think this could be a tough game for the Mets where they only get maybe 2 or 3 runs. And then on the other side of this game with Bartolo Colon, I mean, I don't know how he does it either anymore, but 284 ERA, 1.07 whip, basically a strikeout per inning so far to start the year. He only goes about 6 innings per game, but he's been giving you solid. I mean, there's really nobody on this Cincinnati team other than Joey Votto that has a WOBA over 345 in the last year and a half. This is another pretty bad offense here. They don't hit right-handed pitching all that well. Votto's the one exception. I mean, 410 WOBA, 225 ISO. He's definitely somebody you got to be worried about. But, I think this is a game that ends up 3-2, 2-1, 4-2, something like that. Stays below 7 runs. So I'm not really looking at a ton of bats here. I don't think it's a great spot. And I think the Mets offense has been good and people are going to target them. I just don't see the upside, to be honest with you. So next game we can talk about, we got Oakland against Detroit. This is an interesting one. Rich Hill is on the mound for Oakland. He's been striking a lot of guys out early on here. 29 strikeouts in 19 innings, but he has given up 20 hits, 9 walks. Eventually that's going to come back and bite him. I mean, it's only been 7 runs that he's given up thus far, but I think he's pitched himself out of some jams with those strikeouts, which is something that he can do. He is a good strikeout pitcher, but he's facing a really good offense that put a hurting on this Oakland team yesterday. Right-handed bats have been the way to go up against the lefty Hill. So you got a guy like Miguel Cabrera, 408 WOBA, 198 ISO. He had the double dongs yesterday. Pretty good lifetime numbers against Rich Hill that include a home run. You got JD Martinez, 395 WOBA, 276 ISO. I think there's some big bats in this lineup that you can look at against Hill. Hill is kind of cheap. He's going to be a popular name that people are throwing around today. I think he has a nice floor with the strikeouts, but there is a chance that this lineup could light him up for 6 or 7 runs. And, like I said, he's been giving up quite a bit of base runners and stranding a lot of them. Sooner or later, somebody's going to hit a big home run and, clean the bases off those guys, and he's not going to strike them out. And that's going to wind up biting him in the, in the backside. So I think that's something that you gotta look for here. On the other side of this game, though, he is going up against Mike Pelfrey, so there is a good chance that he gets a lot of run support as well. Pelfrey gave up a 312 batting average to lefties and a 297 batting average to righties, although he didn't give up a lot of home runs, which I guess is the saving grace for him. But I think there's a lot of guys that you can look at on this Oakland team. You got Josh Reddick, 360 WOBA, 203 ISO. based on the numbers, he's the guy that stands out the most. But there's a lot of other left-handed bats. Stephen Vogt, Coughlin, Kana, all these guys, Coco Crisp. I mean, a lot of these guys are really good against weak right-handed pitching. So, I think a couple of them could have some big games. You can stack this Oakland team up for really cheap and, still be able to go up and pay for some pitching or get some of these other big bats we talked about into your lineup. Next game, we'll talk about Milwaukee at the Chicago Cubs. I actually like Kyle Hendricks a little bit in this game. Left-handed bats hit 267 against them with a 132 whip, so that's the way you want to attack them. But there really aren't any left-handed bats in this Milwaukee team. You're basically talking about probably Scooter Gannett, and he's really the only one. He's not even all that great, and he's 3 for 18 lifetime against Hendricks. So, I'm not really overly concerned. I guess Ryan Braun is the bat that you'd be worried about, but again, Hendricks is tougher on right-handed bats. Braun worse against righties actually, but he's still a 365 WOBA 212 kind of guy. Is only 1 for 8 lifetime against Hendricks though, so this is a bad lineup here in Milwaukee. I think it's a really soft spot for Hendricks, and I'd rather target Hendricks than target any of the bats in this one. On the other side, we got Jimmy Nelson pitching, and he's really tough on right-handed batters. They only hit like 200 against him last year, but left-handed batters hit 302 against them with a 1.68 whip. Now, this Cubs team has quite a few left-handed bats they're going to throw at him. Anthony Rizzo, 394 WOBA, 273 ISO, 413 lifetime against Nelson with 3 extra base hits. You got Jason Hayward, who's 3 of 5 lifetime against them. Dexter Fowler, left-handed bat. Ben Zobrist, left-handed bat. So there's going to be a lot of lefties in this lineup. I think it's going to be tough for Nelson to get through it. They're going to make him work. I don't see Nelson going past 5 innings, and I definitely see the Cubs getting some runs. So depending who's in this order for them, I definitely think you want to look at some Cubs bats today. All these lefties are in play for me against Nelson. I think they're going to have a big game. Next game, we talk about New York Yankees against the Texas Rangers. Let me get a sip here. Luis Severino is pitching for the Yankees, and he's kind of struggled here at the start. So left-handed bats have been the way you want to attack them. So I like Nomar Mazara, the rookie, still pretty cheap. 494 WOBA, 250 ISO against right-handed pitching to start his career. Prince Fielder, 374 WOBA, 152 ISO, another guy we can keep looking at. His power seems to be a little bit better this year, but it's still lacking for what you want out of the first base position for a guy you're going to spend on. Mitch Moreland, another sneaky option, 367 WOBA, 233 ISO. Because he's a first baseman and Fielder's a first baseman and you can really only take one of the two, he has gone so much lower owned than you would have expected him to in a lot of tournaments. So this is a guy that I like to use as a tournament option because he's always low owned and he does have that home run upside. And if he hits one for you for kind of cheap, you can have some better bats at other positions and still keep pace with some of the big bats that are, playing first base. And like I said, you always got him lower owned because if people are going to use the Texas first baseman, most of the time they kind of go to Fielder because he has the better spot in the batting order. On the other side of this game, you got A.J. Griffin. Solid start to 2016 for him. 2-0, 3.18 ERA, 1.24 WHIP. He does have a low K percentage, though. He's not a guy who strikes out a lot of batters. A couple Yankees that hit well against right-handed pitching. You can look at Mark Teixeira, 392 WOBA, 326 ISO. Big home run power. Definitely somebody in play. Carlos Beltran, 356 WOBA, 203 ISO since the beginning of 2015. His numbers are starting to come up. Even a guy like Brian McCann as a catcher, Ellsbury and Gardner are starting to play better at the top of the order. Ellsbury stealing bases, hitting a home run last night, finally got that out of his system. I think that these Yankees are in a pretty good spot here. So I wouldn't mind looking at some of the Yankees against A.J. Griffin. I think that could be a sneaky stack that I'll have, some exposure to in tournament, and not just because I'm a Yankees fan. Next game, we talk about Philly against Washington. We got Max Scherzer on the mound. Now, Scherzer has not been the Max Scherzer that we, knew him as to start the season this year, but he is going up against Philly. It is a bad lineup. I mean, the only two guys I think you can look at are Miguel Franco and Odubel Herrera, and neither one of them are guys that I'm running to put into my lineup here. So I think this could be a game where Scherzer gets back on track, basically. I'm not sure if I want to use him or pay up for him today, but I don't think that this Philly lineup lights him up either. So I'm not looking for a lot out of Philly, but I don't think that Scherzer is one of my favorite pitchers either, if that makes any sense to people out there. I'm not using either side of this game is basically the way I'm trying to say it. But I will use some of the bats on Washington. Vince Velasquez had 2 gems to start the season and then got lit up in his, in his third start. I didn't even say lit up. He had a tough start. So he's 2-1. .93 ERA, .72 WHIP, 29 strikeouts and 19 innings pitched. Had that big 16 strikeout game against San Diego. I think this Washington lineup's a little bit better than that. Bryce Harper's in this lineup, 478 WOBA, 373 ISO. He has been absolutely murdering right-handed pitching. So I don't really care who the pitcher is. I think Harper's definitely somebody in play. You can look at and spend up on him if you want. Daniel Murphy being the other bat I'd look at here, 354 WOBA, 197 ISO. But again, this Velasquez kid has been pretty good. He's a big prospect. They expected him to be pretty good coming up. And, he's been as advertised, probably even better than advertised. So, I'm not really looking to pick on him, but obviously these are guys that we got to mention as being in play. Next guy I want to talk about, we got the White Sox against Toronto. You got Chris Sale going up against Toronto. So I know you're going to look at the numbers, and Toronto's down there towards the bottom of the league this year against left-handed pitching. But this is a lineup that can hit left-handed pitching. Now, with that being said, it's also Chris Sale, so it's not your run-of-the-mill left-handed pitcher that they're facing. I'm a little bit on the fence on both sides of this. I mean, Sale's been great to start the year. 4-0, 1.80 ERA, .67 WHIP. I mean, this guy's not even letting guys get on base against him at this point. Like I said, you're going to look at the numbers. Toronto's been bad to start this year, but they do have a lot of big right-handed bats that hit left-handed pitching well over their career. Donaldson, Encarnacion, Batista, Tulo. All these guys have been very good against left-handed pitching for years and years and years. So I do just think they're off to a bad start, but I also think it's a bad spot for them here. I like Sale more than I like these bats, but I wouldn't be surprised if a guy like Encarnacion or Donaldson had a decent game. Encarnacion's actually 4 for 8 lifetime against Sale. 365 WOBA, 207 against left-handed pitching. Like I said, he's in a good spot. Donaldson is a 454 WOBA, 369 ISO guy over the last season and a half against lefties. He's got a couple hits lifetime against Sale, nothing great, like a 270 average or somewhere in there. But like I said, you can't really dismiss these guys. I think they're in play. And then on the other side of the game, we got R.A. Dickey. And we talked about this last time. When you're looking at Dickey and you're trying to see what guys to take, ISO, WOBA, all these numbers don't really mean anything to me. With Dickey, what I like to do is look at the BVP. If the guys have a history against him, those are the kind of guys you want to play, because a knuckleball is a completely different animal. So not everybody can hit it. Not everybody can square it up and hit it hard. So what you want to see is guys that have a track record. Jose Abreu is one of my favorite first base plays in the day. 4 for 9 lifetime against Dickey with 3 home runs. All right, so that's a solid. You've seen him do it before, and it also works with his profile. Abreu is a guy who hits right-handed pitching well. So this is a right-handed pitcher that's coming in here and pitching to him. And like I said, he's somebody who sees the knuckleball well. 4 of 9, 3 home runs. Definitely somebody I'm going to have some exposure to, probably the BVP play of the day. Melky Cabrera's also hit him pretty well. 6 of 18 lifetime with 2 home runs. So he would be another guy that I think I'd look at today. Those are the 2 guys on the White Sox I like. But I think guys like Jimmy Rollins and Frazier, and there was one other guy too. There's a whole bunch of guys that have pretty good BVP against Dickey. So I think this is going to be a tough start for him. And I do think that this is a game where the White Sox might be able to put up some runs. Next game, we'll talk about Baltimore at Tampa Bay. Ubaldo Jimenez is pitching. And, this is a guy who's basically struggling to get through 5 innings of a game. He's throwing 100 pitches just to get into the 5th inning. Right-handed bats had a higher batting average against them last year, but usually left-handed bats is the way you want to go against them. I'm not really in love with anybody on this Tampa Bay team. I think Corey Dickerson's a little bit interesting. 414 WOBA, 316 ISO against left-handed bats. Has 5 home runs already this year. And Ubaldo's pitched worse away from home. So I think this could be a spot where, Dickerson gets to him. Maybe some of these Tampa Bay bats get to him, but I don't expect them to put up a big number. I think that the Baltimore offense could put up a big number, though. I mean, Jake Odorizzi pitched against Baltimore about 2 weeks ago. 6 innings, 9 hits, 4 runs, 4 strikeouts. So that's not really a good start for him. I think these Baltimore bats are going to be able to put up some hits and some runs against him here. He's a reverse splits guy. Right-handed bats have done better against him. Machado, 400 WOBA righty on righty situations, 252 ISO, 7 of 19 lifetime against Odorizzi with 2 home runs. And on DraftKings, he's shortstop eligible too. So, like I said, I like Correa a little bit. I'm not a big fan of Story today, but I definitely don't mind using Machado in the shortstop spot on DraftKings. If you're playing in cash games, I think that that's the best spot for anybody here. So I would definitely have some Machado in my cash games as my shortstop. He took him deep the first game too. So when they pitched against him 2 weeks ago, Machado also had a home run in that game. So he sees the ball well and profiles well against Odorizzi. So I think it's a really good spot there. Adam Jones has actually hit Odorizzi well, 8 of 20 lifetime with a home run. And then even some of these other guys, righty on righty is where he struggles. So you can look at a Trumbo, you can look at a Jonathan Scope, maybe even a J.J. Hardy. I wouldn't mind a stack of right-handed Baltimore bats against Odorizzi. I think they can put up some runs today. And then the last game on the slate is Boston at Atlanta. David Price. David Price has been tough to figure out. He's thrown 2 gems, and he's had 2 games where he's blown up in the first 4 this year. Left-handed bats have been surprisingly better against him. So maybe a guy like Nick Markakis, which actually makes sense because Markakis' lifetime is 14 of 51 against Price for a 275 batting average, which is pretty solid. But honestly, this is a bad lineup here in Atlanta. So I like Price a lot. I think he's going to have a good start here today. Definitely a guy that I would use more than I would use any bats against him. On the other side of this game, we got Matt Whistler, who everybody stacked against last week, and he went out there and threw an absolute gem. But the fact still remains that this guy was horrible against left-handed bats last year. I don't think he's turned it around all of a sudden, so I'd still be looking at left-handed bats. A guy like David Ortiz, I think, is in a great spot. 414 WOBA, 320 ISO. The problem you have is this game's in Atlanta, so there's no DH. I don't know if he's going to play. Last night he came in as a pinch hitter. I don't know if they're going to roll him out there at first base or if they're just going to keep him on the bench as a pinch hitter. Even as a pinch hitter getting one at bat, he might have some value, but you can't start him if that's the case. So if they don't start him at first base, I wouldn't be looking to put David Ortiz in my lineup. Who I would be looking at, though, would be Travis Shaw, who would then be stepping into the cleanup spot like he did last night if David Ortiz is out. He's got a 348 WOBA, 175 ISO, but so far in 2016, a 333 batting average. Again, he's a left-handed bat going up against a pitcher that was horrible against lefties last year. And if he's going to be batting cleanup at a reasonable price, in a good matchup, I definitely think he's somebody else we want to look at. So as you can see, I am out of breath after those 15 games, but that's the breakdown of today's slate, all the pitchers that are on the mound and which guys profile to do the best against them. Like I said, there are some big bats to pay up for. There's also some really good pitching up there that you're going to want some exposure to as well. So a lot of decisions that we have to be made today. Make sure you get over to the rotocurve.com website. Be a bunch of articles up there today by some of our fellow contributors pointing out some of the ways that they're looking at the slate and some of the stuff that they can give you. The more information that you guys have, the better the decisions that you can make when it comes down to lock. You don't have to agree with everything that we say or everything that anybody else says or writes down, but be able to read everything with an open eye and understand the case of why people like a certain player or don't like a certain player, because it'll help you make decisions about whether or not you think that's the guy you should use or there's somebody else who's in a better spot, which is basically what this game's all about. So thank you guys for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.